You're listening to Confessions of a Counselor podcast. Here we will talk all things mental wellness. Hi everyone, it's Janice here, and welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Counselor. Today I thought we would talk about 5 helpful tips for getting the most out of therapy. So I think sometimes there's often a worry or concern about what therapy is, what am I supposed to do, how does it look, and how do I get the most out of it? Is therapy right for me? So I took some time to brainstorm 5 things that I think will help you to get the most out of therapy and your therapy experience. So the first one is to find the right person. So finding the right therapist is really key and integral to the process. So you could spend years in therapy with a therapist that isn't the right fit for you and not get very far. Or you could spend 3 sessions with a therapist that is a good fit and have tons of growth and learning. Now, the length of time for therapy is really different for everyone, but a lot of the research shows that 80% of success in therapy comes from the relationship built between client and therapist. And so finding the right person is really key to getting the most out of therapy. The second one is to be real. So be real with your therapist. So oftentimes we don't go into therapy thinking that we're going to lie to our therapist or thinking that we're going to leave pieces out. But it's really important to try as best as we can to be as vulnerable as possible with our therapist. And it does take time to build that relationship. So again, we're not expecting that you're going to be 100% vulnerable in that first session, but really knowing that you, again, want to find the right person so that you can eventually be 100% vulnerable with your therapist so that they can get to know you, understand you, and really know the pieces of your life that feel difficult or hard and the pieces that are going well so that we can tailor the work that we're doing to all of you and not just the version that you're trying to present. Number 3 is vulnerability. So this goes along with number 2 in that we want to be real with our therapist and be honest with them about what's going on. And this is included in number 3 as well. So if something isn't working, if we need something different from our therapist, to be vulnerable and share what it is that we need from them and give that honest feedback. So Brene Brown in Daring Greatly defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So in order for therapy to be true and real, we need to have that vulnerability with our therapist so that we can start to dig deep into what our experience is, and that includes the relationship that we're building with the therapist. So some of the best practice for what's going on in our lives is practicing the things that we're learning with our therapist. So we want to have that vulnerability with our therapist as well. Number 4 is a tricky topic for some, and for others, they jump right on board with this. So it is a therapy journal. So I really can't speak more highly about a therapy journal. The difference that I see in clients who write things down in session or after session, who really take to heart what's going on and process in a journal, I see such a difference in those clients than the ones who come to therapy, do the work outside, but there's such a deeper exploration when we're able to go back and reflect on what we've written. So a therapy journal can look like a written journal in a notebook. It can look like notes on our phone. It can look like audio recordings of us speaking about what's going on. But there really is a difference when we're able to write down what's happening in therapy. So I really do highly suggest bringing a journal that's specific for therapy. And finally, number 5 is self-help. So don't be afraid to do work outside of session. This is not going to upset your therapist. It's not going to offend your therapist. If you do readings or research or learn things outside of session. In fact, sometimes clients will come to session and say, hey, I learned this thing. Have you heard about it? And I'll be like, no, teach me about it, and I'll learn something. Or sometimes clients will come to session and say, hey, I learned this thing. Did you know about it? And I'll be like, yeah, we talked about that a couple sessions ago. And that was just the different way in which they needed to hear it for it to actually land. So doing self-help outside of session can be so helpful and so integral to the building blocks of therapy, because sometimes hearing your therapist or hearing me talk about the same thing or in the same way that I would normally explain it might not land for you. And so doing that work outside of session can just add a richness to therapy that wouldn't be there before. So those are my 5 tips for getting the most out of therapy. 1, find the right therapist. 2, be real. 3, share your vulnerability. 4, keep a therapy journal. And number 5, doing self-help. Talk to you next time. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Confessions of a Counselor podcast is available anywhere you like to listen to your podcast, both on Apple and Android. New episodes will be released every Friday. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to join the conversation. Leave a review or subscribe to the podcast hosted on the Anchor app. All these details can be found at janicelyons.com. Until next time, take care.